Restoration live stream. I'm here with Father Palmer and Father Eldracker from Mary Help of Christians here in Australia. Thank you, Fathers, for joining me today.
Thank you, Matthew.
Well, I think what we'll start off with is maybe just a brief introduction with you, Father, on who you're aligned with, and brief introduction there.
Right, so we are working with, if you want, Bishop Sanborn from the Roman Catholic Institute based in Pennsylvania, the United States. Bishop Sanborn has a seminary. We have also different churches, parishes in the United States. We have also two other bishops with Bishop Sanborn, Bishops Selway and Flies. We have also we work closely associated with the Sisters of St. Thomas Aquinas in the United States. So that's pretty much our apostolate, and we are here also in Australia.
Excellent, obviously. And Father Eldracker, is there anything you wanted to add to that?
Well, yes, we of course, Father Palmer and I both were trained under Bishop Sanborn at the seminary, and we've actually known each other since I was about 10 years old. When Father first joined the seminary back in the day. So we've been together in that sense for a very long time, working together, helping each other with. Well, I used to serve Mass for him back in the day.
Oh, that's a long time ago. You shouldn't say that.
But so we've been both with Bishop Sanborn for many years, for my whole life actually, in my case. So we've been doing, of course, what we do because it is so necessary in the current situation of.
Sorry about that. I think we might be encountering some tech issues. If you could just help us out, if you see a blank out or anything, maybe just put that in the comments. We do have one of the parishioners here who's helping out, so please go ahead with
that.
But
then the version, the ultimate version, will be all edited.
Yeah, well, that depends how much work I want to put in. But no, I'm just kidding. No, absolutely. So what we'll go into next, hot off the press, so to speak, Francis Bergoglio has just passed away, and I think this is a good time for both of you fathers to remind everyone of the position. Father, you put out an article on X. It seems to be getting traction and a lot of likes as well. But yeah, could you please remind the audience of your position on this?
Right. So briefly speaking, our position is that the Vatican II changes have been a departure from the Catholic faith. So we say the See of Peter is vacant since the death of Pope Pius XII. We say that even though the papal elections have been valid, the candidates, the papal claimants, if you want, because of an obstacle in their will, were not able to receive the authority that comes from Christ, because of that obstacle, which is to do harm to the Catholic Church. And that has happened systematically since 1958, I would say. So that's briefly our theological position.
Excellent, thank you.
And I posted an article.
Yes, on X, and then
yes,
excellent.
For more details.
Well, let's now talk about, and this is where most of this live stream is going to be about, is the Australasian mission. Now, it started, I think, as Australian mission, but let's go back from the very start. Father Eldracker or Father Palmer, I'm not sure who you
Father.
Well, it all started really when Bishop Sanborn was invited to visit Australia towards the end of 2016 to administer confirmations. And in that trip, the bishop visited, I think he went to Brisbane first, and then he came down to Melbourne, where we are today, in the general area of Melbourne. And he administered confirmations to a large number of people. And at that time, he was approached by some of the faithful here in Australia, asking what it would take to have a priest residing here in Australia and being based here permanently. And so the faithful at that point began to work with Bishop Sanborn, and I think actually originally, Father Palma, there was talk of you maybe coming.
Yes.
and to Australia, and then the plan changed, as sometimes the plans do have to change, and it was actually on Holy Thursday of 2017. Bishop Sanborn called me into his office, and he asked me, "So how'd you like to go to Australia?" And it wasn't
Did
what
you have
I-
any idea what you were getting into?
it was not what I was expecting to hear being called into the bishop's office,
Yeah.
but I said, "Sure, why not?"
Yeah.
And that sort of set things in motion. So then,
And we're very glad you did say yes.
well, if only I had known who I would be spending my time with.
Yeah.
Had he said no, Bishop would have said, then do it.
It's one of those, you don't have a choice questions.
Exactly,
Well, I was very, very happy to go. So that led to, at that time, Father Selway, now Bishop Selway, and I's visiting Australia in May of 2017, so almost exactly 8 years ago, that he and I came out for, I think it was really just 3 days. Came in on a Friday, left on a Monday, or a Tuesday maybe. So it was a very short trip, but in the course of that trip, we were able to meet the parishioners here in Melbourne. We only visited Melbourne at that stage because there was really only talk at that stage of setting up a base in Melbourne and working for the faithful here in Melbourne, providing them with Mass and the sacraments on a regular basis. And so we visited Melbourne, we met the people, we offered Masses that weekend, conferred all the sacraments that needed to be done. And at the same time, we also were looking at properties because part of the whole process of getting a priest here was to have a place that we could use as a chapel, a place for the priest to live, a place to have a chapel set up permanently so that people could come to daily Mass, we could reserve the Blessed Sacrament, all of the things that you would want to have in a typical parish life.
Right, if I may add to that, what Father is saying is absolutely true. That is to say, to start.
Yeah, someone said froze.
You're back.
Well, we're back. Thank you again. I think we're just having a few. I think we've got a very intense setup here, and I think maybe some of the technologies are struggling.
Right.
No, it's the devil trying to
Do you
attack
think
us. I don't think so. Just to be clear, that is a joke. That is a joke.
Yes,
Thank you,
I
Father.
was saying that yes, what Father is saying is absolutely true. That is to say, to get established
Yes.
in a place, especially far away from the United States, was in the beginning very difficult.
Yeah.
It
Yes.
required a lot of work, a lot of thinking, a lot of commitment on
Yeah.
the part of the people, a lot of paperwork,
Yes.
finding a property, as he said. So it was a major task
Yeah.
to build something here.
Yes, and so in that first week, the 4 days that now Bishop Selway and I were here, we went and we looked at properties, a place to set up as a chapel, a place to live. We ended up, as a result of that very brief weekend, we went through the process of renting a property. So initially we were renting a property in Gladysdale, which is a very rural area outside of Melbourne. And that's where we were for the first, about the first year, give or take. We had a 1-year lease on our first property. And at the same time, we couldn't move in right away because we had to wait for everything to be, actually we had to have a corporation set up, and so we had to do the paperwork for that.
Exactly, the corporation, right there is a big thing
Yeah.
on the amount of.
And I think immigration lawyers.
Well, that came into the picture much
later.
a little bit later
Okay.
on.
Yeah, but it's connected with that, and
Yes.
it's a huge thing. I mean, still now,
Yeah.
we are every day we talk about that. How to make sure that everything is well done,
Yes.
lined up. Yeah, so eventually, then Father started to say masses in Brisbane as well, which was the first place Bishop Samuel visited, right? As you said.
Yes.
And then we did Sydney, right? Adelaide. So we little by little, or right, Father by himself first started to expand his apostolate. I would be in contact with him throughout the years, almost daily, I'd say, and I even visited the country 2 or 3 times, I think.
Well, a couple of times, but
Couple of
you
times.
might remember, Father, we went to go see together the property that we
In
ended
one
up,
of my visits, yes.
we ended up
So we're working together, but definitely father took the how would you
So
say?
you sort of started supervising, so to speak, in the background.
Yeah, but father took the
and then
heavy
we-
work.
yeah.
He did the heavy work.
Yeah,
Yes.
and then father was able to rope you into.
Then when everything
You're
was
now-
fine, then I came.
Yeah. Oh, you've been a priest for longer, father. So it's like,
Yeah.
is that like the longer time up
Exactly.
privilege, maybe? No. Well, it depends if you wanted to talk more on that, but I've got a few notes here as well. We
Sure,
talked
no, go
before
ahead,
that
go ahead.
there's been a lot of expansion, and you did mention that there's been a lot of growth since Father Eldrak has been here. Did you
Yes.
want to tell the audience around what's happened there?
Right. So basically, yes, you can tell them Father, how many times we travel, what do we do.
Well, we started out branching out, as Father was saying, into Brisbane and then Wangaratta as well. Those both started in 2018. We used to be able to go only once a month. Obviously, at that point I was one priest, so I could say 2 masses on a Sunday, but there's only so far you can get on the course of one day. So I would end up typically saying 2 masses on a Sunday. So I'd visit these different places about once a month.
And I think as well, Father, we will even be having some of the pictures of some of the different missions
Yes,
as well.
yes.
So
If we want to look at Brisbane, initially we started going there would have been November of 2017. That was the first sort of major mass center that we started going to regularly. And there's I would say about 50, 55
50
people there in Brisbane, and it has grown a bit over the years.
Okay.
Some converts, sadly some losses as well, but on the whole, it's a growing mission. And so once Father was here, once Father joined the apostolate truly in person as opposed to just his daily supervisory role, then we have been able to increase the frequency of masses, and now typically we go to Brisbane to offer mass twice a month. So
And the same with all the missions. Really.
yes, really
And
everything.
the goal is to go 2 times a month
yeah.
to all our missions.
Yeah.
In Australia.
And did you want to go through did we talk about Melbourne specific growth or?
Oh, we haven't.
Yeah. So just for the audience.
Yes, so
in case
every
they-
mission,
yeah.
every mission has grown.
Yeah.
Every mission.
Yeah.
And I would say exponentially. Father, if you have to give some
Well,
statistics from the beginning up to now, what would you say?
Well, from the beginning, the original group of people that Bishop Selway and I came to visit in 2017 was, I would say, about 60 people, give or take, here in the Melbourne area. And then things have obviously expanded now, and I think at this point we have probably 220 parishioners throughout our apostolate, and then there's, I think, about 30 to 40 sort of catechumens, people who are interested. Some of them are taking classes, some of them are just mildly interested, some of them are very committed and just preparing for the sacraments. Some of them are going to receive the sacraments even within the next week for the first time. So there's a lot of growth in that regard.
And in your experience, fathers, is there a massive correlation between when a priest is like a Sedevacantist priest, such as with MHT or RCI, is in a place geographically that does increase the growth a lot?
Yes, eventually it does. Obviously, we always presuppose the
Yeah.
grace of God, right?
Yes.
Obviously, but
And why do you reckon that is? Is it because it's easier for people? Is it more availability to access questions? What is
the presence? The presence of
Yeah.
priests is the let's say the word
Mm.
goes from ear to ear. No, the news, the advertising. So all of those factors. Yes, as I was saying, people as they search for truth, they are more inclined to actually become Sedevacantists, taking the position, let's say, that there are no popes nowadays, when they see there are priests in a given place.
Mm.
So, and that has happened a lot of times. The people in Melbourne, in Sydney, in Brisbane, they search for traditional clergy and they find us. And then they contact us,
Yeah.
and then they join.
So
the
really,
of
just the
chapels.
presence here has
Absolutely,
a massive,
makes a big difference.
massive impact on really the salvation of souls across.
Absolutely.
Because just what happens there.
Yes.
And what other areas did you want to talk about where you're expanding or where you've been helping out?
Well, from since the last year, right, or so, we have, by the grace of God, expanded our apostolate into literally Asia, the whole continent, not even southern, eastern Asia, if you want. All of a sudden, it became a part of our apostolate.
Yeah.
Well, honestly speaking, we were not thinking about it.
Yes.
We're not by any means looking forward to that, because that was not even in our plans.
Yeah.
But then, on the sudden, it was more or less at the same time, I would say, we got requests from different countries in Asia, in Japan, in Vietnam.
Would it
in
have been
Singapore.
possible for RCI and MHG clergy in the practical order to help these other countries if there wasn't a base in Australia?
I would say no. Australia is a much closer country
Yeah.
to those regions, I would say.
Certainly, we could never go as often.
Yes.
Even here, we have limited numbers of times that we're able to go, because obviously there are a number of costs involved in the
Yes.
trip, and it's still a long flight from
Yes.
here to Vietnam.
But much longer from the United States. I would say
Yeah.
double.
And I think now would be a good time for me to remind the audience here. You will see a donate button for Mary Help of Christians, and I think, and you would agree, fathers, that it's really impossible for you to do what you do without the financial support, and that can come worldwide. So it's not just Australia; it's even Japan, Vietnam. And so when that donate link comes, you can absolutely donate there directly to Mary Help of Christians. Back to you, fathers, on what more you want to talk about around.
Yes, so
mention.
our apostolate, because we are two priests,
Mhm.
two priests can do a lot of things.
Yeah.
We are able to administer the sacraments to many more people. Our reach, so to speak, the reaching out of people has increased. Father started years ago with catechism classes online.
But you were telling me some numbers.
Yes,
how
I
many
have
catechism classes as a father you've now done since you came here?
Certainly several thousand.
Thousands.
And that have doubled because of the two priests, basically.
Yes, it's a lot of
So
catechism
and
classes.
it
That's a lot of.
they reach.
Yeah.
I think, yes. I mean, we have people all over the world tuning in to catechism classes, and I think we're up to probably between us almost 12 to 15 classes a week, probably now.
In addition to everything else.
Yes.
That's that's a very good effort.
So between the two of us, obviously,
Mm.
we share the load of the classes, but there's probably 12 to 15 classes in a given week, and over the course of 5 years, that really adds up.
Mm.
And yes,
Another major accomplishment that Father was able to do was the calendar. The Catholic
Yes.
calendar. That is something that has not been done literally since.
Is it Australia calendar or Australasia? How does that
He
work?
probably can explain that.
well, we've ever since the beginning we've called it the Australasian
Mhm.
Catholic calendar. That's an old one.
One, but it shows,
Yes,
it shows that you
The
have
audience
one
can see two designs
Yes, this
here.
is- from 2021, Father.
That
Your
was-
first one.
That was the first one, I think.
Okay.
Was either 2020 or 2021. I think this is the fifth year that we've done it.
Right.
Um,
But yeah, if you could explain more.
but we called it the Australasian Catholic calendar from the beginning, because I was using as the source was known as the Australasian Catholic Record, which is something that was historically published for the clergy every year. Yes, so as we were saying, the Australasian Catholic Directory was published for the priests in Australia. It was published by the bishops of Australia jointly before Vatican II, and I was able to get finally the entire set. So I have all of these from 1890 to 1980. Not the later ones are not quite as helpful, of course. But what these directories show is what was the mass and the office and the feasts and the ranking and the particular feasts of each diocese and the patrons of each diocese and the anniversaries of the dedications of the different cathedrals in each diocese and so forth. And that was spelled out for every year in Australia.
So you couldn't just go into ChatGPT and say, design
Exactly, no,
Australasian
no.
calendar. This is a lot of work.
It took Father several hours of
Wow.
intense work, going to libraries, taking pictures of all the books, doing the research. Because as Catholics may know, every country may have its different feasts and different rules, etc., etc. So Father was able to compile all of that.
Roughly, I think if I was in the audience, I'd be thinking, how many hours did this?
The first one took the most time. I would say the first one was it took about a month to put together.
Yeah.
And that was, yes, as Father said, I had to actually go into Melbourne, I actually went to the State Library of Victoria, because some of the volumes that I needed at that time were in the State Library. And then I went to the seminary library in Victoria, in Melbourne, which, of course, thanks to humanism, is open to the public. So it was very strange for me as a priest, of course, having gone to Bishop Sanborn Seminary and so forth. Here I am, a priest in my clerical suit. I walk into the seminary library, and there's ladies behind the counter who don't know Latin, who have no idea what I'm looking for, and I have to go and say, I want Dewey Decimal Number, this book, such and such and such, from the archives that hasn't been opened.
Since 1958?
Actually, since ever. There was one book I needed to get into, had been poorly bound, and I could tell it had never been opened because the pages were actually glued together. So I had to go through with a letter opener, which the library staff kindly provided to me, and open the pages of this book that had never been read in history to get the information that I needed. So the library staff, I mean, they tried, but that was a very strange experience to go into a seminary library with the lady librarians, and then there's random people in jeans and sweatpants and so forth just milling around the library. It was a very interesting experience. But I spent I think I went in 4 times.
Wow.
And this is a result, if I may.
Yeah.
The result is to have a beautiful calendar for Catholic individuals and families to follow on the feasts or the fasts and abstinence.
As you say, Father, you just said of catechism class, the scary colour.
The scary colour, the purple.
That's
right.
Lent's covered with purple. Means you need to fast. But no, we get.
But for
so
Australia, Australia, New Zealand, that's the most important thing here, because it is true we also provide the American calendar for Catholics in America, but this is meant for Australia and New Zealand.
Yes.
Which is again, to me, is our most remarkable thing.
Yes,
honestly speaking.
And everyone, myself included here, gets to benefit from all that work. And I think what we might do is we've talked briefly, I guess, at a high level around the mass centres, but I think it might be a good idea to go through, fathers. Maybe we've gone through a few, but were there any more specifically you wanted to talk about?
Well, Melbourne is obviously, we may say, our headquarters, if you want. We are located in the Melbourne area, and I would say we have a congregation of around 80 people in Melbourne as we speak. We have daily masses. The schedule changes every week or so because of our duties somewhere else. Yes. But we have daily masses, I would say, and yes, we are based the whole time here if we are not traveling, and we have also from here, from Melbourne, it's easy to travel, or easier, I would say, traveling to Wangaratta.
Yes.
Wangaratta, we do Wangaratta by car.
And that's in the same state as Melbourne.
Yes, you can.
Yes.
Where is it located?
Wangaratta is about 3 hours drive north and a little bit east of Melbourne. It's what Americans would consider the middle of what we picture as Australia, or at least what I pictured as Australia, was sort of desert and just dry and very, I don't want to say hostile environment, but not necessarily.
That's a pretty accurate.
A very, very barren environment. And as you drive north from Melbourne to Wangaratta, you sort of go over some little hills, and then all of a sudden it's just brown. So Wangaratta is about 3 hours north of Melbourne by car. And there was a group of people in that area. They had actually, some of them had lived in Brisbane at the time that Bishop Sanborn was visiting in 2016. But they moved down to outside of Wangaratta to a wonderful little town called Yakandanda. And so there was this group of people who invited me to come up and say Mass for them, because it was 5 or 6 families initially, and it's a long drive.
Right, but,
For that, I
and
think.
now it's a big community, I would say.
It's
there,
our
there are,
second.
there are a lot of Catholics in
Yes.
that area, so which is kind of interesting, like in the middle of nowhere, if you want, so to speak. In that area, there are lots of traditional Catholics,
Yes.
let's say. And so that we have like 60 people now.
It's getting to be
Wow.
60 people. Yeah.
It's something to compete with.
Exactly.
It's
So
good.
Melbourne should watch.
That's
Yeah.
and for the audience, like when we think of Wangaratta, it's not a keys. It's not like a capital city or anything. So
But it's
Small
a
town,
convenient.
but
It's
it's-
a convenient meeting point.
because of all the
You have-
more rural.
Yes, you
Yeah.
have people coming from really three directions, and then
Makes
the priest
sense.
comes from the fourth direction.
Yeah.
And a lot of our parishioners at Wangaratta travel an hour or even
Yes.
more to come to mass on Sunday,
Wow,
which is very
that's
commendable.
effort. Yeah.
And then, yes, as Father was saying earlier, we were able to increase the frequency of masses there. So we're going there twice a week. I'm actually going there this Sunday. Yes, that community has grown substantially as well. And we've been very fortunate to have a very reliable location that we can use pretty much whenever we want it for mass there in Wangaratta.
Right, and then I would say Sydney. Right, Sydney is the youngest, I would say, from all the Australian ones.
Yes, it is the youngest. I was first asked to go to Sydney for 3 people, actually. And actually, Father, no, you were the first one to go to Sydney.
Yes. Yes.
Uh,
Yeah, Father was organizing these 3 people, putting them together, so to speak, right? And then I ended up going first, right? And yes, it was very small,
Yeah.
but now we have anything between 20 and 30 people now.
That's
Yes.
if we
So,
were to do the percentage
exponential
stats on
growth.
that, that's extreme.
Yes.
But then again, you can make stats. Some people are very treated.
And so Sydney is also very promising, I would say.
Wow. And before we move on, I think to the next ones, I just wanted to mention back into your calendar, Father, we have Newell Barrett here commenting in all caps, actually. Thank you again, Father Eldracker, for the calendar. And I think that it's not just him who feels that way. So, but another good comment there.
Well, I'm glad that everyone else appreciates it, but the main reason I actually started doing it was because I, as a priest, needed to be able to know what mass am I
Exactly.
supposed to say
That's
today.
correct.
So it was mostly for me, but
Yeah.
I decided that it was probably a good idea to share it with
Yeah.
everybody else.
That's it. Well, so we've talked about Melbourne, Wangaratta, and Sydney. Where else?
We go to Adelaide also 2 times a
Yes.
year, so there's a small community there.
Yes, that's a very small community. You can usually count the number of people at mass on one hand, but there's hope that if we are able to keep things alive there, that in time it will grow, just like everywhere else.
Yes, maybe
yes.
this is a good opportunity. If
Yes.
people are hearing us from Adelaide or they know people, tell them to contact us.
Absolutely.
We hear rumors,
Okay.
and there are people in Adelaide,
But-
people near Adelaide, people outside of Adelaide,
Okay.
but then the rumors are very ethereal and never come into.
As in the people don't contact you?
Yes,
or-
well,
At the end,
Yeah.
but I think they are still thinking about it.
yes.
Right.
So there's still hope for Adelaide, I would say, and I
Nice.
do hope that it expands significantly, just like our other mass centers.
How many people did you say are in Adelaide?
Well, you can usually count the number of people in the pews on one hand.
So Sydney before it was what? it is
Sydney before
Exactly.
what it became.
Yes.
Correct.
Yes.
So we go to Adelaide 2 times a year. let's say.
Yes. Yes.
Consistently, though, because again, the apostolate is something very serious. We
Yes.
take it very seriously. So we already determined
Mm.
that because we are 2 priests, we will go 2 times a month
Yeah.
to the different locations in Australia
Yeah.
and 2 times a year to Adelaide. Because of the number of people now, if there are more people in Adelaide, we will be happy to increase our presence.
Of course, you have. It's very, very limited in your time that you
Yes.
can.
Yeah, but
resource, so you
we'll
have to
make room
prioritize.
for that. That's our life, basically.
Well, thank you, Fathers, for going through the mass centres. And Father Palmer, did you want to tell us a bit more about recently the event, the Catholic Signals Connect, and how that's been going?
Right. So,
What that is.
and we did our first one, international one, in Sydney last year, and it was very successful.
Sorry, just for the audience, I just realised. Could you describe what it is?
Yeah, it's an event. As the name says, it Catholic Singers Connect is an event for young people, Catholics throughout the world, to connect with each other, to get to know each other, to build up new friendships, and it has been very successful. our first one, we did it last year. We actually got people from four different continents, literally speaking.
And it wasn't just Australasia.
It was from people from Europe, people from Asia, and so we are hoping to repeat it this year again. And yes, if people are interested, they can contact us as well. We are hoping to do it in Sydney again. Sydney is a major location, so everyone wants to come to Sydney from all parts of in the world. So we decided to use it just as well then, and so we are planning on doing it at the end of July this year. So 2-3 days in Sydney, the event for traditional Catholics in Girls Connect.
Excellent.
Yes.
And I think before we move on to fathers, I think the massive milestone, which we'll talk about here, and then the next steps, I guess, is there anything else we wanted to talk about around the history of what's happened?
Well, more than the history, we can probably talk about the future.
Okay, let's go to the future. Well, I think a massive milestone, I'll let you announce the news, Father, about this structure that we're in. There's been very big news.
We went from, as Father was saying, here in Melbourne, we went from renting in 2 different locations, first for 4 or 5 years, into actually possessing, owning a place, which is a major thing.
Which we're in at the moment.
Yes.
This live stream.
And that's a very good, healthy sign with regard to the congregation, when the priests are able to have a place, right, that belongs to the church.
Ownership, as opposed to rent. Yes.
Absolutely. So that's a very strong sign.
Yes.
That the congregation is vibrant.
And it's a very good location as well.
It's a very good location.
Yes.
People are very happy with it. I would say average, our parishioners live 30 minutes, 40 minutes if you want, which is very reasonable for them to come and attend masses.
Even throughout the week now, I think.
Throughout the
Saturdays,
week,
it's
yes.
before at night.
It's like day and night.
Yes.
Day and night. It has been a major change in the lives, I would say, of our parishioners here. And I would say, so we talked about the history, right, a lot. I would say that we still have projects, right? Our projects are to keep expanding, to keep saving souls, to administer the sacraments. We want to keep going, so to speak, and we want to also increase our locations one day. Anywhere in Australia, just feel free to contact us if you are listening to this. And also we one day we want even to have a school here. That's really our ultimate goal. There is yet no let's say formal plan, but ultimately speaking,
and you need nuns for the school.
Exactly. We understand that ultimately speaking, for a Catholic community, it's very important to have a school. And
that has an increase as well, doesn't it, Father, or it can have an increase on vocations because of children's exposure.
Correct.
And,
so that's the, let's say, the ideal of any parish. Let's say the ultimate goal and end is to have a parish with a Catholic school. And that's why I mentioned in the beginning that we are closely connected with the Sisters of St. Thomas Aquinas, whom we one day hope will be here.
Yeah, excellent. And Father, did you have anything else you want to say about what's next for the Australasian mission?
Well, we obviously are in our new chapel building, which has been a major milestone. It does need still some renovations, and certain things need to be improved and so forth. The building was built in the 1950s originally, and it's still obviously functioning as a church. We had Mass this morning. We're having our interview here now today. But there are still a lot of things that we will need to do to make it better, really, for our purposes, to have the flexibility to potentially have a school in the future, or to expand the apostolate, to be able to open up different programs. We mentioned already the catechism classes that Father and I have been teaching for a number of years now. So there's a lot of renovation work that's still going on here in the chapel to modernize certain things. Well, not pretend to
Not in the theological sense.
to modernize certain things like making sure that the roof never leaks or that it doesn't become uncomfortably warm in the summer or uncomfortably cold in the winter. There's not a lot of climate control, air conditioning, so forth in the building. So there's various improvements that do need to be made, which are significant, but merely having the property as our own has been an enormous milestone. And this goes back to the idea of the paperwork and the processes that are involved with really conducting a permanent apostolate, is that there are so much paperwork and presentations and permits and regulations and requirements that you have to meet, that this building has been a godsend, quite literally, because of its history as a church. It had been a Protestant church.
So you don't need to get a permit as a place of
But
worship.
it's already there.
So
It's
we
already
can-
there. So
Sorry,
yeah,
go
and
for
I
it.
would say yes. So we have then, I would say, for the future, right? We would not be able to do any of these things without the support
Yes.
of the people.
And one thing I think we're very fortunate on as well, because you actually do, Father, a lot of the remodeling. I know there's someone else who's here and
We've had a couple of
generated a lot of the time, which is actually
Yes.
fantastic. But I guess it just shows to show that, when it's not like you can even kind of work with your limited resources, save even some of that money to do.
But it's not easy.
yourself.
It is
So
not
it's-
easy.
yeah.
It all depends on the generosity of
Yes.
the people.
Mm.
We wouldn't be able to do any
No,
of
because
those.
materials as well.
Like the traveling, the giving the
Yes.
sacraments, the catechisms,
Yes.
the calendars, all the amount of work we put into things.
Yes.
We will not be able to do that unless people support us.
Yes, everything comes down to, we don't have outer sources of income.
Mm.
So people might be thinking historically, the diocese has lots of money and the diocese funds projects and so forth. We are entirely dependent on the faithful whom we provide the sacraments to. So if we want to go say mass somewhere, we have to say, well, how much is it going to cost us? If we didn't have to worry about money, we'd go everywhere.
Of course.
But we have to be able to get from point A to point B. We have to be able to eat. We have to be able to do whatever we can do. And we depend on the faithful for that entirely without any other support. And so we would very much appreciate your continued support, or if you're new to listening to our live stream here, you're not familiar with our apostolate, we do have a website. We have a donations page on our website, so we appreciate any contributions that you might be interested in making. And again, everything that we do is dependent on the support of the faithful. And the people have been historically very generous. We initially, when the bishop was first asked about establishing a mass center in Australia, people pledged their contributions, and that was very good. And even there were projections at that point. This is where we hope to be in 2-3 years. We, by the grace of God, exceeded all of those projections enormously, even the first year. But all that meant is that we were able to establish the apostolate that much more quickly and that much wider. It reminds me actually of the United States, where Bishop Sanborn and the other clergy working with him were in the early 1970s or the late 1970s, early 1980s. They were saying mass in Boy Scout halls or in various things, the things that we're doing now, 40 years later here in Australia. And I think it's a great encouragement to see where that has led to in the United States. And by the grace of God, hopefully we can replicate that here in Australia.
I think that's a good time to end this. And just if you have tuned in, there is going to be, you'll see a donation link in the chat as well as on the screen, as both fathers mentioned, them helping really like the other side of the world compared to the US, so to speak. So they're not just Australia anymore, but even like Japan, Vietnam, Singapore. It's only possible with the generosity, and I guess into today's day and age with the internet, that support can come from anywhere. So any support I'm sure that you could give financially through that link would be very appreciated, and I think it would also help save souls from the sounds of things here. Well, thank you very much again, fathers, for your time and being on this live stream.
Thank you, Matthew.
Yes, thank you for hosting us.